I'm going to open with markets. And from the grain industry standpoint, particularly those of you that see a lot more milo around you than normal, USDA was out with some numbers today. If you haven't heard, US-wide, they announced this morning about 7.7 million acres of prevented planting, and 3 to 4 million acres of corn in particular that weren't planted, and overall national corn numbers a lot lower than people expected in terms of total planted acres. Yield potential is still phenomenal from one end of the country to the other, and the crop is phenomenally late. So if you don't follow the grain markets on a regular basis, that's a pretty quick snapshot of kind of where things are at. A lot of freeze risk over a lot of the country, but crops are in really good shape, and certainly from a sorghum industry standpoint, both here locally, as you know, as well as around the United States, that's definitely the case. As I jump into things, I think markets were up about 15, 18 cents last time I checked on that news today on the grain side, so do that. As I move over into what I'm really supposed to be talking about here today, started looking through some discussions on farm policy and where things at. I think most of you are aware that this is something that historically we talk about doing every 5 years in rewriting the Farm Bill. Some of you are really good at math and have figured out that we're now on year 3 basically of this 5-year process of getting this done. But I'm going to talk to you today about some of the positives of why I think things have changed a little bit and how things may move forward in regards to that. We'll have a little bit of fun with the process as well. We still haven't passed a farm bill. I think this farm bill, more than any other in my career, has managed to attract a lot of satire, a lot of political debate, and a lot of high-profile opportunities that haven't always happened in the past. Sometimes they have, and certainly if you go back to bills like 1996, there were a lot. But whatever it says, you often come down to, okay, where are we at? What does it mean? Collis Peterson, there's a quote that says, paraphrases basically, anyone who says they know exactly what's going to happen in the Farm Bill is lying. I think down at the bottom it says 8/12, Monday. I think this was actually this Monday in Minnesota. I think Tom might have even been there. But the funny part of it is I went back and looked, and he's quoted almost exactly something like that about a year ago at this time in terms of a discussion in the process. And so I think it just goes to show that there are some challenges in farm policy. It's not as easy as it once was. There's a lot made out about, is this a partisan issue? Is this a House versus Senate issue? I think it's a reflection of some of the challenges that our overall Congress is having right now, and just the fact that there are differences. There are differences at a lot of different levels, and the Farm Bill has certainly been a part of that discussion. And that's made things more challenging for us than we've historically had. Some of y'all asked the questions about, well, why won't they just get it done? Well, as a general rule, there's kind of one topic that seems to kind of be front and center in that, and then a whole bunch of other little things that follow. And obviously, depending upon that one little issue that I'll get to in a minute, depends on what happens. So what is the crystal ball? I think there's 2 camps right now. There's one camp that says we get it done in the next 6 months. I think there's a lot of reasons why that is probably very doable this time around, and some reasons why it's a lot higher probability than it was, frankly, at this time last year. I think the other thing that we've heard a little bit of, and I don't want to overemphasize it because I don't want to give it too much credibility. I think everybody, every chairman, every farm organization, everybody involved in the process is working as hard as they possibly can to get this across the finish line and get you a 5-year farm bill that you can know what your future looks like. I do believe the other reality is though you have dealt with extensions the last couple of years or the last year in terms of the process. Often extensions into a political election year don't really happen. So I think there is small talk today about an extension. And if they do an extension, that might be a 2-year extension. What's that mean? Well, do you have direct payments or do you not? Well, direct payments are a key part of the budget process that underlines the funding for a farm bill. So if you're going to do an extension, at least certainly our group strongly supports, and I think most people believe, you've got to look at keeping direct payments. So are you going to go home and tell your banker, Tim Luss said we're going to have direct payments the next 2 years? Please don't. That's not what I said. I think number one up there is I think there's a really good chance that we'll pass a new farm bill in the next 6 months. But I think we just have to have reality in the back of our mind that if we don't get that done, there is a fallback position and there is something else that can come in and play. The big item that I talked about is obviously nutrition. 80% of the farm bill is now the nutrition title. Most of y'all know that more as SNAP or food stamp programs. And it's a big controversial deal. The announcement right before the break is that the House basically has agreement, and assumptions are when they come back here in September that they will pass a bill across the House floor that has $40 billion in cuts. At that point in time, then there will be no ifs, ands, or buts about moving to a conference process. Then the House will have passed all portions of a farm bill, the Senate will have passed all portions of a farm bill, and the process will be able to move forward. There's been a lot of debate among a lot of groups and a lot of media people about how we got there. A lot of people are very unhappy about the process. One of the things that I remind our producers is it's funny, ag organizations historically have focused a lot on policy and what was good on policy and bad on policy, and we've left the process up to people in Washington, D.C. They haven't always done it the way we liked it. But I'm a firm believer in that the goal is to get to conference. If you can't conference a farm bill, you can't finalize a farm bill. And so the number one priority is to get to conference with what the House passed with the standalone farm language earlier and what we expect them to pass in early September. They will have achieved that goal. That's something that we haven't been able to do the last couple of years. And that's one of the reasons why I believe it's very positive that we get to a conference process and get something done this fall. As we look at that, what does that mean? The reason Colin Peterson made the statement that he made is because there's a long ways between $4 billion in cuts to nutrition and $40 billion in cuts to nutrition. I don't expect that decision to be made among commodity group leaderships. I don't frankly expect that decision to be made among the chairman of the Ag Committee. I expect that decision to be made at very high levels with leadership of the House and the Senate and the White House. And I think that's a key piece. There's a lot of talk then about, Title I and what happens there and what moves forward. Certainly it's no secret this part of the world has expressed some concerns about the shallow loss program, the revenue program. We as Sorghum in particular have some concerns about it and how we fare in it. We have some concerns related to this group about how irrigated and dry land works and some of the technical details. And I won't get into the weeds with you today in terms of all of that, but just know that it's something that your ag organizations in this part of the world are very aware of. We're working that if policy like this does become part of a final farm bill, we'll try to make sure we get legislative fixes in there that don't put this area at a disadvantage and don't make big differences between commodities in terms of policy winners and losers in terms of the process. Certainly, one of the things that happened with the failure to pass the farm bill across the House floor came cartoons like this that said it's a lot harder than they make it sound. This is the farm bill, and I'm just a bill guy. I think most of us that have been involved in policy work that are my age and below haven't faced many losses. We had a pretty strong record of being able to get policy and get it done the way we wanted it, when we wanted it. And I think this has been a wake-up call for all of agriculture in terms of how different the system is. And the fact of why it is important that you support your commodity organizations and your general organizations like Southwest Ag Council. I'm speaking to a lot of members of the choir here. You are leaders in the leadership you've taken in water, in many cases, rolls right over into the policy side. And so you wouldn't be here if you weren't. So I realize I'm preaching to the choir in a lot of that, but I just can't emphasize enough how important it is that you have support for those groups not just mine, but all of them, because there's a lot of analysis that goes into this. This stuff gets more complicated every farm bill, and there's a lot at stake in terms of it for all geographic areas and all crops. And so just encourage you to continue to be a part of that. So the big question is, okay, when are we going to know it? What's the final outcome? So this bill expires the end of September. Is it going to be done by then? No. Let me just answer that one real quick. It's not going to be. It's just probably not practical and realistic. What are some factors that could drive some decision on what a timeline is? There's two of them that I put up here for you to really think about and consider. One, dairy policy debate that really becomes very critical at the end of December. That is a timeline where there's some policy reasons why it becomes very, very critical that it be done by then, or some things happen. The other one that has been going on the last couple of years, but is here again, that you may not have heard much about, but you will hear much more about over the next days and weeks, is we have another debt ceiling as a country that is coming up. And we have to raise our debt ceiling again, and we have to have those negotiations. And certainly the Farm Bill is a piece of legislation that saves money, and certainly that is attractive in these financial times to a lot of people that are looking at how they solve these big problems that our country has financially. So I think that's a piece of legislation that there's no exact time on when it moves this fall. There's certainly no exact details on what it looks like, but it is something that I think you should watch closely, and you'll hear more about as we go forward, and it may give us some clues and some indications in terms of where things move in terms of a farm bill as we move forward this fall. So with that, I will stop and just see if there are any specific questions related to where we're at in the process. Not, thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you, Jim.